The idea today, some of the more recent definitions talk about this idea of inspiration, the aspiration, about the innovation, and it's about relationships. Remember, it's a social process, dealing with people. It's getting people, working with people, moving them to think differently, to behave differently, to act and to attain differently. Now let me just give you a very quick, in 2 minutes, 86 years worth of research into this area, but it's going to be very quick. First of all, we know that back in the 30s, that the first people looking at leadership at the time were interested in the traits. What sort of qualities do people have in terms of, they call the great man theory, which is maybe a statement of what things were like back then. It would be the great person theory today, of course, but looking at personal traits and characteristics. Physical traits, intelligence, linguistic skills, whether they were extroverted, confident, dominant, things along that line, trying to come up with the indeed package of what made a leader. And actually they found that some of these traits actually do correlate with leadership. But they also found that there were short people who were very strong leaders. They found people who were introverted that were very strong leaders, so the model didn't work. So then they had to go to the next area. And the next area dealt with how people behaved. The idea that you could train people to be leaders. And what you needed to do was just give them a skill set so that they could behave accordingly. Typically this was done on either support for the individual or support for the task. The idea that if you had somebody who was really task-focused and somebody who was really social-focused and really got along well with people, that they would be a strong leader. But then, this fell out of favor because they found that not all situations those kind of leaders worked. Sometimes you needed to consider the situation. That gave way to the third area, situational approach to leadership. Looking at the competency and commitment of people. Looking at whether or not, what were their needs. And not all people needed to be led the same way. This model here you've seen, I'm sure, many times. It talks about the competence and commitment of followers. And basically the model goes that leadership style, a focus on the task, a focus on the social aspect, needs to change as people progress. So, you are a coach, you've got a rookie player on your team, you need to be highly directive with that person. Really focused on the task, not so much on relationship. Up here, as they become a little more experienced, somebody on your team or somebody that you're leading, with more experience, you kind of give them more rope, and you start to build that relationship. As they continue to move along and be developed, actually the relationship continues to be even stronger and the task actually goes down. This here is high task, high relationship. This here is more just relationship and less, and basically here you stay out of their way. Now, this model, advanced by Hershey and Blanchard, really worked in terms of workshops and development because it had real intuitive appeal. You could teach people, understand the situation, determine where your people are here, and develop a leadership style accordingly. But what they found was nobody likes to be left out here. Once you have relationships, you got to keep going. And these people over here maybe would like a little bit more relationship as well. So this model kind of fell out of favor as well. The idea of the right traits, the right behaviors, the right situation, mix them all up, and we end up with kind of a Frankenleader thing, right? The idea that we can create leaders just by giving them the right training, that they have the right raw materials, but all this stuff misses out. And now we know, in studying leadership, what's missing. Leadership is about people, about emotions. I love this quote from Henry Ford, who perhaps had it long ago. Often needed an extra pair of hands, but often found there was a human being attached to the hands. And the idea of their emotions, and the idea of trying to understand their thought processes, and what we know today about emotional intelligence and its importance in leadership. I'll get to that in a second. But the whole idea about people and their moods and their emotions, and the importance of trust, and all of those elements worked into leadership.